Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast, where we dive deep into the media industry headlines and dissect the digital disruption that diverges the masses into the new media counterculture and away from the media establishment. Here is the king of podcasts.
After being a little disappointed from movies like Blacklight and Jackass Forever at the start of February at the box office, I feel better now because just came off of last Friday watching Uncharted with Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg, and that was surprisingly good. Really an underdog favorite that I didn't expect would do so well, but maybe I should have figured out better once I learned that the movie was based off the PlayStation games, and I didn't really put that together. So that's good, and it worked. Probably worked better than Assassin's Creed. Probably worked better than some of the other movies out there. It was not a bad setup for that. Plus, you can't do wrong with that kind of lineup in your starring leads, co-starring the movie. So there's that. And we got Batman now in 2 weeks. Looking forward to that. See where things go. And that's where I'm at for talking about movies right here on the Broadcasters Podcast. Thanks for listening in, finding the show as you always do. This is episode 214. So we're going to talk about the cinematic universe box office bounce that Uncharted and the Batman should be bringing because it should look good. I mean, there's a lot of signs that say that we're going to get somewhere really good. We know that is what's fueling the box office. Cinematic universe movies, period. Whether they're good or bad, at least they're coming out and making the most point. When you look at so far what the movies have done this year, if I go to domestic right now so far, this is for 2021. Last year, you're talking about cinematic universes, period. Spider-Man No Way Home, Shang-Chi, Venom, Black Widow, F9, Eternals, No Time to Die. That's encompassing. And then you got Ghostbusters encompassing the cinematic universe, taking 8 of the top 10 spots. That says everything. And you're talking about movies that made well over domestically between 125 and almost $800 million. And that's not counting worldwide, but that's just a part of it. When you look at everything now and the current market of where we are, if I look at the weekend charts, you're still going to see quite a few cinematic movies that stay up on top, but not so many right now because we don't have anything that's out that's new. But Spider-Man No Way Home still is pulling in the gross of $770 million domestic. That's not counting what they're making overseas, but if you put it all together, 1.833 million. Or excuse me, 1.833 billion, excuse me. Big numbers. And then you look, Uncharted, number 1 this week, $44 million this past weekend. It's working. And it made, $140 million total? And now it's got a release date in China, so that movie's going to just take off. We're going to see a second one. That's a new cinematic universe created out of PlayStation, out of a PlayStation video game. So why not? And then you look after that. There's nothing else that's really in the top 10 that stands out because it's just a time of year of movies that's just not doing well. I mean, I'm thinking of movies I've already watched. Blacklight got $7 million right now so far. I did see that in the theater. Thank God I have the subscription. I don't pay that full price. And so far, $8 million total. Now, I wonder what the production budget was on this. I think they probably took a hit. That's what I'm guessing. I'll have to look and see what they put down for this movie and see if it did make its money at all. $43 million. Oh, man. They're taking a tanking. They might have been sitting on this movie for a while and then just like, what else are you going to do? But yeah, it's hurting pretty bad. It's going to probably be a Netflix classic. You just wait and see. But then again, like you see the script, you see everything else, I wouldn't be surprised. So let's talk about the Batman. That's coming up March 4th. There's a lot of push to it. I don't know what the estimates are for that, but it looks big. Like I wouldn't be surprised if that movie doesn't pull $80 to $100 million in the box office. That's what it should do. With the kind of push they've had, I don't even remember how many times they actually pushed the movie back, but they have had to push it back. And people have anticipated this very much so to where we've seen lots and lots of, I've seen a tremendous amount of where this movie was supposed to come out, and it got pushed back. So now what we have so far, it was originally going to come out June 2021 and only got pushed back once. Now, the plan for this Batman series now is a shared universe, 2 sequels planned with 2 spin-off series in development for HBO Max. So you're not going to get away from Batman in general. It's just going to be in there. They got a pretty strong cast in here. You got Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, Paul Dano, Jeffrey Wright, John Turturro, and Colin Farrell also in that part, just to mention the others. It's strong. And also another Batman donning the cape. And, people are starting to make the comparison. And I'll tell you what, I was a huge fan of the Christian Bale Batmans. And if I had to pick who I would say would be the other Batmans that I enjoyed after, Keaton after that would be Keaton would be my second, Affleck the third. And then I had to put, Kilmer and Clooney. You kind of put them in the bottom of the barrel in my own thought. But yeah, I'd put Keaton's, Keaton would be second after Bale. And then I'd probably put Affleck there. Some people are going to say it the other way. Some people are actually going to say that's Affleck first. But, it's depending on the interpretation. I prefer the Bruce Wayne to be a little bit more of a younger, the playboy character, which is what Christian Bale gave me, which is what Michael Keaton gave me, more or less. We didn't get that so much with the Batman with Ben Affleck because, they didn't give us the female interest that was in that because the Ben Affleck character was an older Batman. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think he was bad, but I don't really think that the DC Universe, with what they did in the Justice League series, did much for it. Plus, the Batman, Superman, the super movie they did, it took about a good hour and a half for that movie to kind of take off. And Jesse Eisenberg, did not hit well as Luthor, and I just felt like it was dragging a lot. And the same thing goes for Justice League. The first one also dragged a lot too. And, I didn't watch the Zack Snyder director's version to see if it was any better and see a longer version of it, try to go and convince me. It just doesn't make a difference. They're just not movies. Even Man of Steel in the DC Universe, they're not movies I go back to watch. They just don't have that staying power that the Marvel movies do. You want to go back and watch Avengers or Iron Man or Spider-Man, yeah, you can go back to those pretty well. Kind of hold up. But the DC stuff doesn't. But this is where we know that the DC Universe really needs to pick themselves up this time. Because we know that they really were hurting this last round. They've gotten a couple things right. Like, the first Wonder Woman, they made it right on the money. The Wonder Woman 1984, not so much. It took a hit. And it wasn't so good. And when I look at Superman, they have not hit on that character in a while. I did not think the Brandon Routh version was really much, but I do like Henry Cavill. He looks the part, and I just don't think they give him enough to really play the part or make it a little more of his own, because he looks like Superman. Don't get me wrong, that guy is good. But if they do it in the Justice League, if they're going to come back to that again, what are they going to do? Now, Aquaman, they hit it right with Jason Momoa. That was a home run to me. I thought they did a really good job with that. So you got characters in that Justice League that really hit. Another Aquaman coming up later this year. You got that going for you. And then The Flash, which is also coming up. DC Universe has good things to come up, but Batman is going to be the reset for this DC Universe to really pick it up. And because they want to go ahead and take some of the original characters and just, release them out of the universe, start with some new characters and get back into it. If they can. And I give them hope. Maybe they will pull it off. So when I look at the movies that are coming up, before I get into the Batman and start talking about, let's just go ahead and analyze what the cinematic universe is, just Marvel versus DC. Let's go for the comic books first and what they're going to be able to do. Now, the Batman will be standalone on March 4th. And there's nobody else going up against them the following week. The Batman gets 2 weeks uncontested. And probably learning from Spider-Man No Way Home, where there were no other movies that really stood out after that, then you just let it set up. And it makes sense to do that. So, and really, some of the other movies they have coming up after that, even on the following March 18th, I don't even know what some of these movies are. Like, they do have Uma, and I don't know who's in this at all. So there's one there, and I don't know what that is. And there's one called The Unbreakable Boy that's a wide release on March 18th, and I don't know what that is either. But now that movie, Zachary Levi, Megan Fahey, Patricia Heaton, it's not a movie I know. And it's not a movie I think that's going to be standing out. So, like, there's not many movies coming out in March. It's Batman on its own for a couple of weeks until The Lost City, which even then, that's not a movie I think that's going to do much of a damage anyway at all. So I don't know if there's other movies that come out in March that are going to stand out, but we're kind of short on movies. And this has been with the pandemic and the shortage of production being done, that this is where that shortage comes in. Because I actually thought there were more movies that were going to be coming in, but for whatever reason, some movies got pushed back. Again, some more movies got pushed back, but this was a great time to push some movies out in March, but they decided not to. Some movies got pushed back for whatever reason. But then everything starts picking back up. April 1st, you got Morbius, so Marvel back into the mix. Then just going by the Marvel and DC universes only, Doctor Strange, May 6th. DC League of Super Pets, May 20th. Then Thor, Love and Thunder is July 8th. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Part 1, October 7th. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever is November 11th. The Flash is November 4th. And then you got Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, December 16th to close things out. And there are still some other movies that have not been pushed in the slot and been slotted yet. We're just waiting on it. There's a lot of great movies still left. And other movies within their own cinematic universes coming in. We got another Sonic the Hedgehog also starting up. The second one's coming in now. Then you got Jurassic World closing themselves out until they find a way to get that back up and going, because people can like dinosaurs, right? And there's more coming up. Oh, another Harry Potter base with the Fantastic Beasts. That's also coming out as well. But that's what really stands. And then other Halloween Ends. You got that coming up. So cinematic universes are here. And that's what's going to fuel this box office. But there's not enough of them. And there's not enough movies that just come out that are just different that really will stand out. So I don't know what my movie theater in particular is going to have that's going to really, fuel interest for me to go to the movie theater in March. I'm waiting to find out. But there's not much here. When I look at what they have coming up, like I see what's now playing, and then I see coming soon, there's a lot of stuff about Batman. Then there's one called The Outfit. I don't know what that is. It's a movie I haven't even heard about, but it's the same people that wrote The Imitation Game. So I don't know about that movie, but, it looks interesting. But it's not a movie that's going to just stand out. That's going to have that big, nonstop kind of deal to it. Lost City after that. Then you got Morbius, Sonic. Ambulance comes out as well. That's pretty soon. But I don't feel anything about that either that really just stands out to me. Like that was actually supposed to be pushed, I believe, in February, and that got pushed to April. I don't even know why. That could have been pushed to March, and it could have been just fine, but they decided, no, we're not going to do that. I wish they would take away the whole thought process that we can't have movies early spring, and there's just some, spectrum about that. And that's because of Oscar season for whatever reason. There's just certain movies you run before Oscar season that are just not going to stand out. But we got to talk about the Oscars in a few minutes, because people are not happy about that and what's going on with it, because it's just, there's not a lot of good going on with it. Let's just say it like that. Some controversial changes made to the Oscars this year in the ceremony. So there's that to discuss in just a minute. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. All right. Scott Mendelson at Forbes writes, the Batman can't save the box office alone. So there's been a lot of promotion for this. Trailers you can find all over the place. You can find them all over YouTube. You can find them on the NBA All-Star Game this past weekend. But what they've done at the later part of being able to push forward the Batman trailers, when they added Zoe Kravitz and added the Catwoman character into the mix of the trailer, did make it better. I think the second wave of trailers that came out after that is what really sold me on the movie. I already know I was going to go watch it, but it really did do much. Now, Scott here says he'll be thrilled if Batman differentiates itself accordingly. The issue is not how big the Batman will open, but that so much of it would be competition has flown the coop. The Dark Knight can't hold up an entire industry. So some of the movies that we have, there were some movies that were going to be put in March, and they got pushed. Let's talk about that. So there was a Guy Ritchie movie with Jason Statham and Aubrey Plaza called Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre, which I was looking forward to. It was going to be March 18th. They pushed it. That sucks. And that's apparently due to confidence in the action comedy genre. And there were some other movies that did not do well. Then you have The Contractor with Chris Pine, which got sold to Showtime. That's going to be put on Showtime now. So those are two movies that are not going to come in March and April. And then two of the next 3 weekends are almost mostly vacant. So February 25th, March 11th, March 18th are almost completely devoid of big, wide releases. So the room is open for the Batman to kick ass. And you know what? I'm surprised I'm not one of those people that decides to go, catch a movie a second time. Like I almost was compelled to watch Spider-Man again because I got the plan. So I could go back and watch it again. I just don't really feel like I was going to go back and watch. Maybe the Batman, maybe it was one of those things where I should go back to catch something I might have missed. But I don't know. I'd like just to catch the movie the first time. I've only gone once where I've gone to another movie a second time, and that was just to go on a date because I needed a reason to go on a date. It was a movie date, and I figured, let me go take this photo. And whatever it was. The movie was not another teen movie, if you're curious of that trivia. So anyway, Foo Fighters Horror Movie Studio 666 is this weekend. There's nothing on March 11th. And then you have a 70-set horror flick, X, that comes up March 18th. And then Lionsgate's and Zachary Levi's The Unbreakable Boy, which they hope will duplicate the $24 million success of American Underdog, the Kurt Warner story, on March 18th. So Scott, he relays what I'm talking about. He talks about the reluctance of studios to offer big deal movies right before and right after a big deal Batman flick. Now, when The Dark Knight came out, they did put out Hellboy 2. It opened to $35 million, only to plunge 71% in weekend 2 against The Dark Knight, which debuted $158 million. Damn. Which was great. Batman, The Dark Knight, wonderful. We can all say that. That was the epitome of the great Christian Bale Batman trilogy we had. It was wonderful. And then the X-Files, I want to believe, opened with $10 million during Dark Knight's $75 million second weekend. But then you also had Mamma Mia that opened out and was still able to go and do pretty well. Then you had other movies like there was Step Brothers that went up against Dark Knight and really didn't do well. $30 million in late July 2008. So the first real competition going up against Batman will not be until March 25th, and that's Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum's Lost City, March 25th. And you know what's going to happen? I'm going to probably have to go watch that damn movie because I have nothing else to watch. That's what I don't want to be doing. Now, he also talks about he'll be thrilled if a lack of competition means Paramount must succeed. Rom-com opens big and legs out bigger than it otherwise might have. They're basically doing Romancing the Stone over again. They even the director had said it before. I mentioned it on this program. You know I did. So the biggest threat to movie theaters right now isn't COVID, but rather too many studios prioritizing streaming gains even against money in hand theatrical success. Right. There are certain movies that don't have to be pushed to streaming. They can be put in the box office. But they're saving the money that they had to give back to the theaters for exhibition and the risk of gambling to put a movie out when it's not going to make that much money. What I wish would happen is certain movie theaters would just say, you know what? I mean, when it comes to Warner Brothers, with HBO Max and what they kind of lost by putting all their movies simultaneous, there's that to deal with. Like, they're not going to make the kind of money. Like, you need that initial first influx of cash. That's what the box office gives you. And it's obvious people are going back to the theaters again. Spider-Man proved that. Ghostbusters proved it. People are going to go back to the theaters if the movie's good. People will go back. Uncharted was an unproven movie as a box office movie. We know it had some credibility and a little bit of credit because of the cast members. Plus, the fact it's a PlayStation game with many different sequels. So there was a chance that was going to pull out, and it did. And it didn't even get as much promotion as I thought it could have when you think about it. Then you got Encanto that also, like, come on. If people must have been watching the movie because that damn song, all those songs right now on the soundtrack are just destroying the Billboard Hot 100. Surface Pressure. We don't talk about Bruno, Dos Orgullitas, all of that stuff. It's just destroying the Billboard Hot 100. And the UK chart, forget about it. So that's just a thought there. Oh, and the Family Madrigal. If I have to hear that again. Oh, my goodness. And there's not much in the animated either for some of the movies, because the last one that really pulled out was Universal Sing 2, $333 million worldwide. There's little commercial situational reason for Disney to have a movie like Pixar's Turning Red go right to Disney+. But there's a thought that we just have to have certain movies that just got to go in. So the Batman is going to be single-handedly responsible for a month of domestic box office. And the movie theaters cannot live one movie alone. So what else are you going to have? Can we get some other movies slated up a little bit? Like, there's still time to kind of move some movies up and get them into the schedule. Like, really, we need the movie theaters. The movie theaters need to have a little bit of a bump of something to watch. Because what are they going to do? They're going to, like my 16-screen theater, what are they going to do? They're going to have to go and, like, hold over some movies to kind of occupy the theaters, or have Batman run, like, 10, 12 screens. And there's, then you're just going to, like, split up the movie theaters, and you're not going to have that big crowd for some of these movies, which sucks. I don't like that either. Some of the other things we have, too, is we had some movies that moved their tentpole series a little bit more breathing room, so that you're not putting movies up like, every other year or 2 years after, things like that. After 2 years of pandemic and back to box office, we've seen a scenario where, at least until April, the entire industry, save for October, May, November of last year, had been predicated on one or two movies. August was all about Suicide Squad and Free Guy, the former of which tanked. And you know what? Free Guy, I meant to go watch, but I remember there were so many other movies that were coming out that I wanted to watch instead. Plus, you know what the reason was? At my Regal movie theater, at that point, they were still not running movies late. Like, the last movies that would run would be like at 7:30 at night. So I couldn't even watch like a 9 o'clock showing or a 10 o'clock. They didn't even have that. Now, we at least have movies that are like 9, 9:30, 10, 10:15. And for the Batman, we'll probably have one that goes to 11. So at least you're going to have that. But they're not going to run any late movies right now. They don't want to do that. Obviously, the protocol is still in place about how they have to go and keep everything sanitary, and I can appreciate that. And, of course, my theater has done very well to keep that up. But that shouldn't stop anything. And I think also the production, they're just kind of holding back. Because, remember, there were a lot of movies slated for this year. I talked about that extensively. And for whatever reason, they just decided not to go ahead and put these movies out. Push back, push back. Case in point, they talk about here, September was all about Shang-Chi. December was all about Spider-Man, No Way Home, and Sing 2. And January was all about Scream. But January was supposed to have Morbius, and that got pushed back to April. Why did Morbius come out in March? And by the way, it didn't have to be, because here's the thing. If Marvel could have done the thing right, or Sony, excuse me, you didn't have to push the movie back to April. You could have just pushed it to like March 18th. But they did. Instead, Morbius is going to come out April 1st. Okay. But then you're going to go up against other movies. Because like, here's the thing for Morbius. Then you have the following week, Ambulance, Sonic the Hedgehog. That'll take a dent. Fantastic Beasts will take a dent on that after that. There's just other movies that will come up that will kind of take on. And then you're only going to get a month before Doctor Strange comes out. So, like, you could have given it more time. You could have pushed it back to March and really got some good length on it. Because obviously Venom had that kind of thing. Spider-Man definitely had that kind of thing. Held over 6, 8, 10 weeks. You could have done that. This is where the movie theaters, the advantage is for them to take the release dates that are open and do something with them. Now, does that mean my movie theaters, because of the fact they got a number of movies that are limited release, will they get pushed into my theaters? That's the question. Because in every weekend of movies, there are lots of movies here that are being pushed out that are going to be limited release. Like right now, for me, I'm looking for Cyrano. It's supposed to be wide release. It's not even out where I'm at. I can't even watch it at Regal. Regal doesn't even have the movie right now. I'm looking, and they haven't put it in here yet. When I look at the theater that I'm at, I only have right now The Watch coming up this weekend. They run Bollywood movies there, so that takes up some space. One movie called Butter, which is nobody I know of, but it's like a Teen Angst kind of thing. Studio 666, Dog, reissuing of Encanto, which only runs a couple times. Uncharted, which is getting lots of times available. And then I got West Side Story reissued, Blacklight, Death on the Nile, which I guess I'm going to watch this weekend because there's not much else to watch. Jackass Forever, Moonfall, which really, I don't think it got much of anything going on when I look at it. And Scream. Oh, Licorice Pizza, Sing 2, Spider-Man No Way Home is still there. And that's it. But there's not much there. And Cyrano's not even out in my movie theater. Or even around. Like, it's only in a couple different theaters, like CMX and Cinemark. Like, I don't even know what's going on with that. But Cyrano's not on all the different screens for whatever reason. So, that's the plan. So if the Batman plays like the second coming of Dark Knight Rises, which was $160 million opening, $450 million domestic, round up, Captain Marvel, then great. But what if it only plays like Suicide Squad, which, made about $325 million domestic, $133 million in its first weekend, or Man of Steel, which got $128 million first weekend and almost $300 million domestic overall. That will be fine for the Batman if it's well received and has post-debut legs, because there's going to be no lack of competition. Again, a month layout for that. Because then you're going to look, okay, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, that'll score well on April 8th. You got Morbius April 1st. Fantastic Beasts April 15th. The Batman is responsible to essentially saving DC Films, Warner Brothers, and the whole theatrical industry, he says. But he says it can't save the box office alone. He's absolutely right. Why does it? I mean, there's no excuse for Batman to be the standalone. Plus, the other thing, too, is that there's been a concern about certain movies that are not doing well. Musicals or anything that's older related movies that are not doing well either, which I get that part. But we had movies that came out this year and they did not perform well. If I look at the movies that have already come out in 2022 that stood out, Marry Me tanked, but it was also put on Peacock, but it wasn't going to do well. You look at the 355, that also didn't do well. That tanked. But I also think putting it out the first weekend of January was not a good idea. Jackass Forever's done pretty well. It's not bad. Scream has done very well overall. But that's it. Death on the Nile, it's hurt. But what else is there? Like Death on the Nile, this is a good weekend for them to hopefully get some people to come back and watch. Because it's already been out for 1 week and there's nothing else to watch right now. So, I don't know. There's not a lot of movies that go out there for people that are older, for the most part, to watch. Because they don't feel like that crowd or any women-related films or anything else is really getting people to the box office. So they're really feeling like that's why there's certain cinematic universe movies that stand out for like a month, and those are the standouts. But then we have to have other movies that kind of give some variety to the movie theater. It just can't be cinematic universe movies. It has to be something else. So some of these movie theaters, they have the room, they have the capacity, the vacancies available. They got screens to run movies. But some of these others that are either limited, they need to get some banking to get them pushed out in front first. Maybe there's a thing where some of the movies that are going to streaming could get a limited release and get pushed to these theaters instead. Can we do something a little bit here to try to get some of these movies out? Because this kind of sucks. Like, I don't like what's going on here and what we're waiting for. Now, there have been reactions so far to the Batman that have been very good so far. Screen Rant reports about this. It was released in London already. And there was an Instagram post from MTV UK that gave some rapturous praise from various sources. There were pull quotes and buzzwords that describe the film as euphoric, sensational, and gripping. In the movie, they say the Batman character has been portrayed by different actors for decades, Some fans were nervous about Robert Pattinson in the Batman, but it's clear he is poised to win over most detractors. The same process of trepidation and acceptance happened when news first dropped that Affleck would be playing the character, but let's see if the process is altered by audiences being able to see both iterations of the character. But what's going to happen is the Batman looks dark, kind of has that Joker vibe to me a little bit. That would work. And maybe they'll figure it out and see how that's going to work out all together. Now, also, other movies, the other movie I haven't seen that was on the list here, which in the list I'm looking at the numbers, does not show up here in the list. By the way, there was a great trailer for all the DC movies coming up this year. And one of the ones I did not see on this list, and I got to look at it again. Yeah, you know what? It's not on this list. It's not showing Black Adam. Black Adam's supposed to be July 29th. And, oh no, there it is. I missed it. Okay. Black Adam is also on that list. Forgot about that. But of the movies they have right now they're showing, you got the Batman, DC League Super Pets, Black Adam, The Flash, Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom. Then there's also Shazam! Fury of the Gods, which is next year. So quite a bit of time before we get to that too. We're going to stay on movies now as we continue because there are a lot of issues that came up. Oh no, we got to go to Uncharted. We got to do that first, which was very good. I think Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg had good chemistry together. They were really good. Tom Holland really kind of plays who he is normally, just a much more adult, but still with the funny in it to some point. But it was a bit of a different character. Definitely a removal from Peter Parker. And it's nice to see that Tom Holland can also be a little bit versatile here, which I know he is. But for another movie that's an action movie like this, stands out. And it really makes him look like he's going to be not going to be typecast as Spider-Man. Because this movie didn't feel typecast at all. We didn't expect him to be feeling like that, but it worked out. It really did. They beat expectations of the box office, and let's see if it's got the staying power to do really well. So for the weekend overall, if you're also including Thursday night, $51 million. The budget was $120 million, and it's got a chance to make it past. Like they've already made past the budget overall internationally. Let's see if they can make it all the way through and really kick in the second week. There's not much going up against it. There's a lot of theaters showing it a lot, so there's where you got. The original projection was $30.7 million. That's what they thought it was going to be over the 3-day weekend. So they get a second week, then Batman. Before that, Spider-Man No Way Home has topped the domestic box office for 7 of the last 10 weekends. And No Way Home came out December 17th, and it's still out there. And it's another movie with Tom Holland in it, of course. Without its own streaming service, Sony, they're saying the studio's committed to its biggest movies, which was Venom's Let There Be Carnage last year. They put it on the big screen during the pandemic and offloaded movies to other streamers. That was Greyhound to Apple TV, Cinderella to Prime Video. Plus, they struck a 5-year licensing deal with Netflix in which the streaming giant gets the domestic rights to Sony movies after their theatrical and home theater entertainment windows. So, direct to Netflix. That will be the chance after that. So, that means Uncharted is going to go right to Netflix. And then Disney will score the streaming and TV rights to Sony movies after the Netflix runs. So, the path to movie theaters was long. Numerous filmmakers were attached to the movie. You had David O. Russell of Silver Linings Playbook. You had 10 Cloverfield Lane director Dan Trachtenberg and Bubbly director Travis Knight. But now the person that ran Venom for Sony was the one that directed the movie, Ruben Fleischer. Video game movies have had a history of commercial and critical failure. And media companies are mining intellectual property to boost their streaming services. They've embraced TV to a way to adapt video games. So we know we had that with Netflix's Assassin's Creed, HBO's The Last of Us, Paramount's Halo, and Amazon's Fallout. But that doesn't mean that Hollywood's giving up on video game movies. We know about Sonic the Hedgehog coming up next month, in April, excuse me. There we go. Uncharted continued the trend of negative reviews. Critics panned it, but audiences have joined it. Right now, 90% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes and a B plus grade score from Cinema Score. So there's that part. And overall, does give me that Indiana Jones vibe, gives me that National Treasure vibe. But it wasn't so much where I just feel like I was just having to compare both. I thought the villains are really good. I think Antonio Banderas and the way they set that up was really good in that too. overall, I was happy about it. I did speak about it briefly on my When I'm Not Podcasting series. So if you want to look for that, I give a little more review there. A few more minutes on that, but that's what I'm going to give you about that part. Let's go move along to the Oscars, because they really pissed people off because of an issue of 8 awards going to be handed out ahead of the live telecast instead of putting them in the show itself. So there will be awards that will be presented in the Dolby Theater an hour before the show and incorporated into the telecast. So the plan is, pre-tape the awards being given out, and then they're going to play it back after. So the live moment of people getting the chance to get their award is not going to be shown as it happens. That real life, real-time moment of enthrallment, of emotion, of excitement, of happiness, of joy, of bliss, that's not going to come up. Now, all 23 awards will still be featured during the live telecast, but they're going to be seamlessly fold the other awards presented earlier in the Dolby Theater into the show. Now, the Association of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences president, David Rubin, he sent a letter to Academy Award members. And he said that no awards are being pulled from the show itself. They're just being pre-taped and being presented during the pre-show of the Oscars, despite premature speculation by some. And the decision was made in conjunction with this year's show producers and Academy leadership with the oversight of the Oscars. So they said that it was evident we need to make some decisions about the broadcast in the best interest of the future of our show and our organization. If you remember last year, Golden Globes and Oscars were really destroyed because people were not watching it. And, the sanctimonious, feeling of celebrities and how we were perceiving them without the glamour and all the pomp and circumstance over Zoom calls did not make them look good. Especially the Imagine debacle. Let's not forget that part. So with the ratings of the Oscar telecast in steady decline, even more last year's steep drop, ABC is known to have been pushing for a shorter, more entertaining show for years. So they're going to be pulling documentary short subject, film editing, makeup, and hairstyling, music original score, production design, short film animated, short film live action, and sound. Other categories will be presented live. The Academy is saying the show will be a tight 3 hours. Now, Rubin says that he stresses that everyone will still get their celebratory Oscar moment. Nothing for the at-home audience will change in terms of the show's flow, but now they're going to know it's taped. It's not live. All nominees and all winners except the speeches will still be presented on air. But then they hope that it will become tighter and more elective with this new cadence. Yeah, they're going to edit down the acceptance speeches. They're going to edit them down. You're not going to probably see them going up on stage. You're just going to show, here's the award accepted. Here's your thing. They're going to cut them off, and then they can just save time on it. That's something that never happened before in the history of the Academy Awards, and now they're doing this. That's pretty shitty right there. Like if it was a recap show or a clip show, that might be different. But to do it on the live, that just looks, it's sad. And that's disrespectful, I think, to those in Hollywood. I think they would probably not like the fact they're getting pushed that way. Probably not. Plus, what is the chance that there might be something that's said that could be like a political message or some kind of things that are going to be put in there that the speeches are going to include? What are they going to start cutting things out? Are these acceptance speeches going to be edited down for content, not just for expediency? Well, we'll find out what people say about it. I'm not going to watch the Oscars myself, but I'm sure we'll get some word about how people feel about the show when the ratings come in and they don't do well, because that's what I think is going to happen. There weren't that many movies to really consider. Plus, a lot of movies on streaming that people might not even watch. Or if they did, it wasn't anything special. So the new plan is similar to what the British Academy of Film and TV Arts has been doing for years. The BBC broadcast begins an hour after the show has started, so they do real-time editing that's used to shorten the presentation for the TV audience. I didn't know that. So that's the plan for this. But they need to do something to try to get the ratings better. Now, they're going to bring hosts back to the show. Kind of questionable who they're going to bring on to do the hosting. Regina Hall Amy Schumer and Wanda Sykes. So they're going to definitely go for the funny, trying to do hosting duties this year. And they introduce a fan poll and sweepstakes that offers 3 winners the chance to serve as guest presenters on next year's show. So they're going to try interaction, they're going to try engagement, and they're going to try 3 different hosts to see what happens with it. I don't know if that's going to be any good, but people obviously don't like what happened here. Because then the Oscar community panned this idea. They did not like this. So they went ahead and let people know about it. Many people deemed the Academy for the decision they argued won't actually bring in new viewers, but alienate the viewers that keep tuning in. And talking about that, 5 of the categories that are going to be, distinctly pushed off to the pre-show: film editing, makeup and hairstyling, music, original score, production design, and sound are actually the crafts without which film, as we understand it, wouldn't exist. They're absolutely right. And others argue that some of the affected categories are actually popular with general audiences, especially the music. Yes. But all the acts categories, editing being the one industry people in media felt were the most egregious. New York Times columnist Jamel Bowie said, film editing, quote, is literally what makes a movie a movie. I as an editing a lot of content myself, I agree. Rick and Morty writer Heather Ann Campbell summed up and says, quote, my favorite way to watch a movie is without any edits, just raw footage, unstructured and out of sequence, with every take that was shot non-linear without story. This is why film editing isn't important to the final product, why the Oscar should be awarded in an alley. I like that. It's pretty funny. There are others that also kept coming in and just bashing away. You can find that in a link I sent you right here at broadcasterspodcast.com. Just take a look for yourselves. People were not happy about it. And I wouldn't be either. So, now, an interesting story that comes in here about streaming, about the TV shows that you watch on a regular basis. There's a thing about where you want shows that, hopefully they're within an hour format. And there was a time, obviously, when certain episodes of a series that are watching on streaming on Netflix or Amazon or whatever, they would stay within an hour format. Maybe there's that thought process someday that it might go to cable. It might be rebroadcast somewhere. But no. Now, there's not a time limit anymore. They're just saying it doesn't really matter. So streaming is supersized TV episodes. But how long is too long? So there's a new drama from Shonda Rhimes on Netflix, Inventing Anna. Episodes, in some cases, clock in as many as 75 minutes. We're putting out movies. There's a movie-length finale, 82 minutes long. So then you have Disney Plus, The Book of Boba Fett, varies anywhere between 39-minute episodes to a 61-minute finale. Now, I can understand partly what this is for because of the fact that they want to make things where the stories don't have to stop at a certain point. That's a pretty logical reason why. But then also, you're making it like a movie. And to make like movie-style type of features for a show, that's pretty damn long. And maybe there's a thing where you could shorten it down. I think keeping it around an hour as the much amount of time that people can engage on a show on a regular basis. Or then if you want to watch a couple of episodes, if you're trying to watch Inventing Anna, and you're talking about, you got to put in 2.5, 3 hours for 2 episodes, that's a lot. Especially when we've been programmed, at a younger age, at least for me, I watch my shows at 60 minutes. But then a 60-minute show with the commercials on television, network or cable, that would bring it down to about 40, 45 minutes in general. Like that's where it was now, but it's not anymore. Gareth Neame, executive producer of The Gilded Age on HBO, he says, it's so strange that for my whole life we were always completely focused on episode length. The story had to fill a certain space. If you're really passionate, sometimes you could get another 30, 40, 60 seconds out of the broadcast because you could just need that extra space. Now it's fallen away as a major decider. The Gilded Age has had 46-minute to 56-minute episodes and opening the clock in at 80 minutes. Now, many hour-long episodes on streamers are just that, a full hour, which means a hefty 15 minutes more than your average drama on an ad-supported broadcast or cable channel. So the added link, they're saying now, it allows us to have room for stories that might have otherwise been really short. Well, is more better? That's my question. So Evil was a show that was on CBS that got pushed to Paramount Plus. And then we look at that and they say, well, Robert and Michelle King, who also did The Good Wife and The Good Fight, they had now more freedom to edit the show to the length they needed. Mega-sized episodes have become also big on reality TV, where you have The Bachelor, The Voice having 2 and 3 hour episodes. Veteran showrunners note there's a different rhythm of TV versus the big screen, despite the movie makers who insist they're creating long-form films, and some of that comes from knowing your time limits. So Neem, we go back to, he says that, you know that every scene that stayed in the cut is something that really earns its place. Even if you're binging all the way through, we have a sense of how long an episode should last. If you start to go a half hour over, then it's a bit confusing. There's a natural link to an episode that we've been all trained to watch, and that's what they should do, is continue to train to watch. Keep it around a certain point. Less is more in this case. I think also teasing to put out for another season. Are you going to just run out of story and do what a network show does, where they run? Like, here's the thing. I got no problem if you're doing 13 episodes and you're going a little bit more, like a little over an hour each. Okay, that's fine. FX used to do all the time for all their shows 10, 20 years ago. But do we want to, there was the problem where you used to have the hour-long shows and series that would go 26, 28 episodes in a season and then come back, after a summer hiatus. But we don't want that either. Keep the amount of time in total down to a certain point, so you got more story to talk about the next season. Because I think that's where you got to have that beginning and end of a season. But then you don't have to really stretch out stories to really put out so much. I don't know. I'd rather just let it so you can have seasons kind of pan out. Because in certain shows, they won't last as long. You won't have as many seasons, that's what people want to have when they binge. They don't want to have a show that just runs a little short and it gets really nowhere. You want to have it where it looks like you got, 6, 7, 8, 10 seasons, and you really get to go through and a whole lot of stuff happens. The irony in longer episode of things is that, as a whole, TV seasons are much shorter than the premium cable and streaming age. The days of 22 and 24 episode seasons are mostly a thing of the past, replaced by the 10, 8, or even 6 episode orders. So even on these jumbo episodes, there's a lot less of your average series to consume than there was a decade ago. So the conversation is about whether TV episodes are too long comes as there's a general consensus in film that movies have pushed the limits with their run times. 3-hour films, and it's akin to a 3 or 4 episode limited TV series. I'm going to bring up movies in a minute. Ultimately, TV has entered a change of choice, not just for viewers, but for producers too. Want to tell your story in a traditional 44-minute installment over 22 episodes? Broadcast your thing. Interesting in telling a shorter story in installments that can expand and contract like an accordion? Welcome to streaming. So the argument continues about movies itself, which, by the way, we've kind of been used to having some movies go almost 3 hours. Like, I've been used to some of that. And, that's where we've been trained differently, because there was a time when we had 3-hour movies. They used to have intermissions. And, like back in the days when Gandhi or The Right Stuff came out, those were 3-hour flicks. They did put a intermission in between, and you had some time to go ahead and, step away, concession, restroom, whatever, come back, watch. But they don't have that now. Even when we used to be on cable, they used to put intermissions out there, which was also interesting. But they used to do that years ago, but they don't do it anymore. So after 2 years of pandemic isolation, maybe you've gotten used to pausing the TV every 30 seconds to check on your phone, grab a snack, use the restroom, or doom scroll on Twitter. The thought of these 3-hour movies staring at a silver screen is so daunting, maybe you consider watching the Batman altogether. And that's another thing some people might consider. They might not want to be able to sit through and watch that whole movie without being able to flip to their phone or being able to have to stop for something. I get that part. Movie makers take all those reactions into consideration when they deliver a final cut. A-list actors in leading roles, a big-name director, and a compelling pitch are key in selling a film, of course. But a movie's running time is one of the less flashy yet deliberately thought-out elements. Unlike precisely timed network TV shows, movies have flexibility. But there's good reasons why studios and directors want to avoid bloat. It's unavoidable. A movie's length has the potential to impact budget, profits, and word of mouth. With millions of dollars on the line, those precious minutes are never arbitrary. In an age where there's no shortage of entertainment options, directors, producers, or executives don't need anyone to exit a movie and think it was good, but it was way too long. When you look at some of the Marvel movies and some of the other movies that came out last year, Spider-Man No Way Home clocked in 2 hours, 28 minutes. No Time to Die, 2 hours, 43 minutes. Last Duel, 2 hours, 32 minutes. Eternals, 2 hours, 37 minutes. There's a lot of movies that went longer. Gone with the Wind, almost 4 hours. Lawrence of Arabia, almost 4 hours. 3.5 hours for Ben-Hur, but those are like, come on, they're Academy Award winners. All right. Streaming services don't face the same financial pressure as traditional studios. They don't require such rigid guidelines. So The Irishman, Martin Scorsese's film, they went 3.5 hours. Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead went 2 hours, 28 minutes. And Spike Lee's The Five Bloods, 2 hours, 34 minutes. And they're, established directors. You're not going to put time limits on them. For most theatrical films, length contributes to the scheduling game. Theaters budget roughly only 3 hours per screening to accommodate time for trailers beforehand and janitors to clean up after patrons. For a 3-hour movie like Avengers Endgame or the upcoming The Batman, exhibitors need to account for an additional hour, which cuts at least one daily showtime. An Endgame, multiplexes stayed open for 72 hours straight to meet sky-high demand, but not every blockbuster hopeful gets that red carpet treatment. And by the way, I've been clocking the amount of time that the trailers are now. In my theater, they're clocking in now at between 16 to 18 minutes of trailers. And this is where I'm talking about once the movie time starts, right? The official show time begins, and then I see Maria Menounos comes up from movie and says, "Enjoy your movie." And then you go off and watch the M&M ad or whatever else they got. And then they move along, and then we get the Regal going, the roller coaster thing. Dum, dum, dum. And then we get into the trailers. And then we go boom, 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 boom. Probably about 6 of them, I think. And yeah, trailer's a little bit long. Might be 7 I watched, sometimes 8. But yeah, 18 minutes, 17 minutes. Like this past weekend for Uncharted, the theater, when I watched the movie at, what was it? 10:15, and the movie didn't start until no, it wasn't like that. But it was definitely 17 minutes at the start of the trailers. 17 minutes, and then the week before it must have been like 19 or 20. Like in February, of course, when months change, then they change some of the things around. Some of the promos that are in there as well. Like, yeah, you can account the fact that for Regal, for myself, they have the unlimited card they have to promote. They got to promote Pepsi. And they might promote something else that says, oh, here's some extra bonus points if you watch these movies back to back. And when I think about it, the movies they were promoting beforehand, yeah, it's the ones that are coming up a little bit later on in the year. And the DC one that had like all the movies coming in this year that are all coming up for 2022, that was nice. Like, I wasn't bored by it, but it is something where we get done with that. And then I'm waiting and it's still well after midnight before my movie's done. And I got in there like 9:45, 10 o'clock. Something like that. I forget what time it was. But yeah, that's crazy. A shorter movie is less expensive to put together and therefore less of a financial risk. Such considerations start with the earliest physical part of a movie idea, the screenplay. A longer script requires more time to film. Also, additional shooting dates tack on millions of dollars. A visual effects-driven film, an extra 30 to 60 minutes more screen time can increase budget by as much as 25%. The more footage on tape, the more time is needed in post-production, which adds some $50,000 to $100,000 per week, an insider adds. It also takes into account the aspects like audio mixing and sound editing, requiring more days to have actors on set. During the pandemic, longer filming schedules meant a greater risk of having a COVID-19 outbreak delay production. But trimming any excess overall before cameras begin rolling can be a difference of tens of millions of dollars. The one surefire way to get directors in a murderous spirit, test screenings. Once a movie's in a malleable place, select audiences get to watch it early, and the experts of the craft of audience research critiques usually come down to 3 points. Pace. Does the movie drag? Ending. Can it stick the landing? And general confusion about the plot. The villain is doing what? So they talked about for instance, the first cut of National Treasure. Included everything but the kitchen sink. 3 hours, 45 minutes. There's always a ton of bad they talked about with this movie, but they said then they got rid of the good for a better good, and the final product clocked in at 2 hours, 11 minutes. For the sequel, 40 minutes were listed out of a more complete version of the movie, a big chunk. As the filmmaker, you're sure you only need to tell all your story. There's one actor who was always in that 40 minutes, you need to call them. So then why, after all this consideration At every step of the filmmaking process, does it still feel taxing to watch some movies? It's not for lack of trying. Many executives blame it on the rush to meet a release date. There's less time to make surgical edits that will prevent moviegoers from dozing off. In certain instances, directors can make the final decision to preserve scenes that others may view as indulgent. And once editing is already significantly on their way, it's easier and less expensive for better or worse to keep it all on screen. At the end of the day, making movies is an exact science. There's no formula that determines how long it will take to tell a compelling story or to know with any uncertainty the exact moment that an audience member will start to get bored. But no good movie is good because it's long, and no good movie is good because it's short. We'd probably want to see a short, shitty movie rather than a long one. And he's absolutely right. Jackass Forever, it only needs to be 90 minutes. Blacklight only needs to be 90 minutes. If they make those longer, you're just stretching out the torture. But I still watch these movies anyway. And this is a movie-related episode tonight, and I really enjoyed it. There's other things I wanted to bring up, but I'm going to hold that off. I had one more story I wanted to bring up, and that was the next podcast bidding war with Spotify and Amazon, but I'm going to table that to next week. I'll hold that up. But anyway, that's where we are. We're going to leave it there. Thanks for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast, as you always do. Thankful for all of you. And if there's anything you want me to go ahead and bring up or talk about here on the program, go ahead and email me, kingofpodcasts@yahoo.com, or hit me up on direct messenger, slide in my DMs, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, @King of Podcasts, all one word. And of course, all these shows are available on YouTube. You can go ahead and catch it now. youtube.com/JBRASCO951. I'll leave it there. Until next week, remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.